Hello, my name is Tony. Hot on the heels of the joyously transcendent and timeless Get Carter, the team of producer Michael Klinger, director Michael Hodges and star Michael Caine made Pulp. The three Michaels reunited to take the Michael with a film as far removed from their previous masterpiece as it was possible to get. On the surface, Pulp, from an original screenplay by Hodges, is a quirky, whimsical, darkish comedy drama, drawing inspiration from the Hollywood film noir classics of the 40s and 50s. You can add to the mix influences from dime store novels by the likes of Earl Stanley Gardner and Mickey Spillane, and the rapid-fire work ethic powering such prolific writers of detective fiction. But there's also a lot more going on in there beneath the initial impression it gives, more than meets the eye, and things do indeed get curiouser and curiouser as it rolls along. Michael Caine wasn't Michael Caine's real name, it was Maurice Micklewhite. He was a Cockney squaddy in the British Army before going into acting. In Pulp he plays Mickey King. Mickey King's name isn't Mickey King, it's Chester Thomas King, and he's a Cockney ex-undertaker. He writes pulp detective novels under a variety of different pseudonyms: Mickey King, Guy Strange, Gary Ruff, Dan Wilde, Les B. Han, Susan Eager, Paul S. Cumming, Dr. O.R. Gann, and S. Odomy, emphasis on the O, Odomy. The film begins in a typing pool somewhere in the Mediterranean. The female typists work away whilst Caine's recorded voice relays the narrative of a book. The book is a hard-boiled pulp novel infused with violence, sadism, perverse sexuality, and philosophical nihilism. Each woman reacting differently to what they hear and translate into text. Some aroused, some amused, some shocked, some indifferent. It's a cool and novel opener, pardon the pun. In addition, we have Caine's spoofy Chandler voiceover providing unreliable context and background to the action on screen. He begins thus.
The day started quietly enough. Then I got out of bed. That was my first mistake. My second was to try and get from here to here. That's how it all began. That bizarre adventure which put 5 people in the cemetery and ruled me out as a customer for laxatives.
Although filmed on location in Malta, the geographical setting for Pulp remains unnamed. It resembles a hybrid Latin American banana republic, 1 part Havana City, 2 parts Spanish coastal enclave, and comes complete with an atypically low-key fascist government boasting a crown prince as presidente. Mickey King is the author of crime classics such as Kill Me Gently and My Gun Is Long. He aspires to emulate in Earl Stanley Gardner, dictating 10,000 words a minute to stenographers to bypass the tedious process of actually having to write anything. He muses,
"The writer's life would be ideal but for the writing. That was a problem I had to overcome."
Mickey's abandoned his wife and 3 children back home, along with a career as an undertaker, so he can live the dream, seedy and low rent as the dream turns out to be. His fictional characters are Philip Marlowe, Mike Hammer rip-offs, and his internal monologues appropriate their hard-boiled patter. Externally, with his trademark oversized glasses, white jacket and trousers, and loose 70s hairstyle, he doesn't have the same physical prowess, but he does manage to somehow score positively with the ladies. Even if this fails to translate as the epitome of sexual romance, whisking his publisher's secretary into the toilet for a quick knee trembler, for instance. As with Bond, women fall into his arms within minutes of meeting him. The similarities end there, but still, it must be bloody great. Do men like this really exist, blessed with such irresistible sexual magnetism or luck? If so, fuck God for not making me one of them. But I'm skeptical. I'd need to draw on a female perspective to find out, I suppose. Pity there's no one suitable to hand to ask, and I have a funny feeling women don't watch my videos, which is probably just as well, for them that is. So it means getting an informed viewpoint on the matter ranks somewhere between slim and fuck all. Mickey's publisher introduces him to Ben DiNuccio, Lionel Stander, who represents a mysterious and so far anonymous client who wants Mickey to ghostwrite his memoirs. Mickey is more than a little reluctant. DiNuccio doesn't exactly inspire confidence. He's a craggy, granite-faced, mafia-flavoured thug with a voice that sounds like a strangled pelican gargling with gravel-laced acid. A whole load of cash is on the table, so Mickey eventually agrees to give it a shot. The deal is Mickey will be transported to his client's location, where his or her identity will be revealed. He is to be met by a contact in transit. What he doesn't know is that the mode of transportation arranged is a coach on a 5-day package tour to his destination. Stuck on a bus with a bunch of tourists stopping off at various historical sites and hotels, Mickey tries to work out who his contact is. A man travelling alone, Al Lettieri, sits next to him. He's reading one of Mickey's paperbacks, which Mickey takes as a sign that he is the contact. The man introduces himself as Miller, a university professor. As Mickey reveals himself to be the author of the hackfest he's reading, Miller critiques the novel in not particularly flattering terms, but Mickey tells him to drop the act, adding,
I know all about you, Mr. Miller.
Miller appears disturbed by this statement and leaves him to sit elsewhere on the vehicle. Stopping at a hotel for the night, there is a mix-up and Mickey ends up in Miller's room and vice versa. Later, he discovers Miller naked, bloodied and floating in his bath, seemingly murdered. Taking a quick look through Miller's suitcase, he finds women's clothing in a false bottom. Seems Miller was a clandestine cross-dresser. Alarmingly, Mickey considers that if there had been no room confusion, maybe he'd be the one singing with a choir eternal. Maybe he was the intended victim. Next morning, he finds Miller's room vacated and a maid cleaning the bath. The desk clerk tells him that Miller checked out earlier. Could there be a cover-up going on? On visiting a historical site as part of the coach tour, Mickey is approached by a very attractive young woman, Liz Nadia Cassini. Within minutes, they kiss him passionately. Like, how does this happen, for Christ's sake? Liz is his contact. She takes him to a car where Danuccio is waiting. After driving to a ferry, Mickey finds himself taken across water to a private island, where the identity of the anonymous client is revealed. He is one Preston Gilbert, Mickey Rooney, an ex-Hollywood star of multiple gangster flicks. He's been living reclusively for the past 15 years after a scandal drove him out of Tinseltown. With a long-standing reputation for fraternizing with known members of the mafia, it is he who has chosen Mickey to ghostwrite his potentially incendiary memoirs. 2 weeks later, after spending time listening to Gilbert reminisce with little pause about his life, Mickey wearily admits he has enough material for several books. Gilbert decides to throw a party on the mainland to celebrate his birthday. In attendance is one of his ex-wives, Princess Betty Cipolla, Elizabeth Scott, who just so happens to be remarried to the current princely presidente who is up for re-election. During the party, Gilbert confides to Mickey that he is dying of cancer, the reason why he wanted to write his memoirs before it's too late. Bit of a vaudeville prankster, Gilbert goes through some of his shtick in the guise of an incompetent waiter, spilling wine and food over unsuspecting diners. When he retakes his seat, having amused his guests, a priest in shades and looking suspiciously like the presumed dead Miller gate crashes and shoots him. The guests, thinking this is another joke, laugh as he bleeds out and dies. Mickey sees it's not a prank when the priest turns his gun on him. He runs for it as the hitman blasts away, taking out a singer and an accordionist instead. Someone wants the writing and publication of Preston Gilbert's memoirs stopped, and Mickey is on that someone's hit list. If he can't solve the mystery of who and why, and fast, then he won't just be writing and living pulp, he's going to be it. Before the adjective meta was a common thing, pulp was inherently meta. By definition, it knowingly refers to itself or the conventions of a genre. It is playful, self-aware, and slyly subversive with a multi-layered approach. The references come thick and fast. Mickey trades Lewis Carroll quotes with a fellow traveller, Dennis Price, a vegetarian Englishman, foreshadowing his journey into a metaphorical rabbit hole. Mickey Rooney, a washed-up Hollywood has-been, plays a washed-up Hollywood has-been, channeling shades of Cagney, George Raft and even Errol Flynn. As a pugnacious pint-sized egotist on borrowed time, he's absolutely terrific and seems to be having a ball. Hailing from Hollywood's film noir heyday is Elizabeth Scott, a woman who starred alongside Bogart, Lancaster, Mitchum, Dick Powell and Charlton Heston in some seriously shadowy crime thrillers. The casting here is nothing if not purposeful. Al Lettieri, a man not unused to mobster roles, flips his macho persona persona of bullish thuggery to portray an academic type with a penchant for Ross MacDonald novels and dressing up in lingerie, and it turns out priestly vestments. There are even nods to Get Carter, Caine and Hodges and Klinger's previous collaboration. On the train to Newcastle, Jack Carter reads Chandler's Farewell My Lovely. On the coach in Pulp, Lethierry reads the Mickey King novel My Gun Is Long. At the heart of the matter in both Get Carter and Pulp lies the sexual abuse of a minor. Jack Carter's niece or daughter is raped in an amateur porn flick. In Pulp, a hunting party has gang raped and killed a young girl, burying her on the beach, paying her father off to cover up the crime. Caine is on fine sardonic form. Mickey King has the thought processes and tough vocabulary of one of his action heroes, but he's no white knight, too unheroic to even be considered an anti-hero. His aim in pursuing the mystery is self-preservation. At the very end, it turns into something resembling a quest for revenge and the righting of moral wrongs, but that is not shown to happen.
I'll get you, you bastards.
He rages impotently. That he ever succeeds is frankly doubtful. Much of the dialogue and verbal interplay is delightfully smart and punchy.
Come up to my castle sometime,
Princess Betty tells Mickey as she flirts with him, a paraphrasing of Mae West's oft-repeated catchphrase. Caine's deadpan voiceovers milk humour from stating one thing whilst his on-screen character does something else. When Liz gets into his bed,
I flipped off the light and showed her the door. I had my pride.
what he actually says is,
Move over.
all the characters are eccentric or off-key in some way or other, with oddball quirks or tics marking them out. Mickey's publisher has a weak bladder and a nervous disposition. DiMuccio is a hair-trigger paranoiac, sudden loud noises causing him to draw his pistol and start shooting randomly. Miller is a transvestite. Preston has little man issues, insisting that taller people sit down in his presence while he stands. Liz and Betty are openly and casually promiscuous, verbally clawing chunks out of each other with feline glee. I've seen it described by more than one critic as an easygoing comedy or lightweight parody, superficial descriptors which seem to somehow skip the veins of darkness that run through it. There is a political undercurrent pitting fascism against communism. Locals seen mocking and jeering a fascist rally. Hitler's mob were treated with much the same jocular contempt in the early days. It wasn't long before the joke wasn't funny anymore. And let's not forget rich, powerful people who by default monopolize the wealth and the power are covering up their crimes. The gang rape and murder of an underage child is a very black thing indeed to build a whimsical comedy around. So, for all its meta credentials, Pulp has something of a social conscience and doesn't take everything lightly. Mickey may solve the mystery, remove Miller from the equation, flattening him on a beach with a ramshackle truck, take a bullet in the leg, end up in hospital, and vow to expose everything and everyone.
I'll get the bastards yet.
But with a corrupt police force on the payroll and threatening him to back off, all he can really do is write and publish his book. How far he'll get with that, your guess is as good as mine. There is a jovial soundtrack with some nice hooks from genius Beatles producer George Martin. If you listen carefully, you can detect reworkings of the Beatles songs Got to Get You Into My Life and Good Day Sunshine fading in and out of the mix. It wasn't a box office hit, something of an acquired taste and not easily pinned down to any traditional genre. Those expecting an action thriller or something as beautifully dark and savage as Get Carter were not going to realise those expectations. It is a singular curio, but one which showcases Caine, Hodges and Klinger's capacity and willingness for taking creative risks, even if they don't fully pay off. Mike Hodges died aged 90 just before Christmas 2022. The two films he made with Michael Caine were standouts in a career which peaked early. Get Carter was the best film he ever made, his Citizen Kane if you like. But Pulp and The Terminal Man are great little companion pieces of his that I continue to revisit over time, and certainly wouldn't want to be without. Thank you as always for your time and attention. If you can find the motivation, please hit like, or didn't like, leave a comment or subscribe. I don't know what's up next, so it might be as much a surprise to me as it is to you. Moving quickly on.